Thank you, Donna. It's actually 4th NACIS. I messed that up. I forgot about Madison. So, like Donna said, I work for the Wilderness Society. We lead public lands conservation and advocacy nationwide. And my job is to make maps that connect people with places and keep them informed on issues surrounding the 675 million acres of public land that we all own together. So today I'm going to share some maps I've made to help defend the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge from oil and gas development. And I made them for a very specific audience, which was the US Senate, which was new for me. So here's what you need to know about the Arctic Refuge. It's considered by many to be the crown jewel of our protected areas network. Here it is in northeastern Alaska. Most of it is in the mountains in the Brooks Range, but between the mountains and the ocean is the coastal plain. And that's the biological hotspot, and it's the coastal plain of the refuge that's proposed for drilling. So just to go back, this is what the coastal plain looks like. And if you look really closely, those little dots are all caribou. So the refuge is also the homeland of the Gwich'in people who have been there and been reliant on the porcupine caribou herd for thousands of years. And to the west of the refuge is the National Petroleum Reserve, which is public land managed by the BLM. So you may remember that towards the end of last year, Congress passed a tax plan that is expected to increase the deficit by $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years. And to compensate for part of that, the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, chaired by Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, was asked to come up with a way to add $1 billion in revenue over the same 10-year period. And the plan they came up with was to open the coastal plain of the refuge to oil and gas. My own senator from Washington, Maria Cantwell, led the charge for months last fall to remove Arctic Refuge drilling from the budget. And that's her in the middle. And there's Bernie. He helped out too. So late in the day on Halloween last year, I got a call from one of my coworkers in DC. Senator Cantwell needed new maps for a hearing the next day, and she was asking us to do it. So I ordered a large pizza delivered to my office and spent that night making the first of what would become a series of maps for Senator Cantwell to support her efforts to remove Arctic Refuge drilling from the budget. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. So the purpose of this first map was to counter one of Senator Murkowski's main arguments, which was that we need to open the Arctic Refuge to drilling for our energy security. And as this map shows, much of the North Slope is already available for leasing. And this gap between what's available and what's currently leased exists because the economics of Arctic oil don't weigh out right now. Oil is cheap. Drilling for it in the Arctic is very expensive. And in fact, 4 days after the tax plan passed, the BLM held a lease sale in the National Petroleum Reserve, and they offered over 900 parcels for leasing. And of those 900, only 7 received bids. And the highest bid was for $15 an acre. So in order to hit the revenue targets that Senator Murkowski says that it will, the BLM would have to successfully lease every parcel in the refuge for 100 times that price. So after that first hearing, I huddled with Senator Cantwell's staff, and we made a list of the main false claims that the pro-drilling side was making. And we decided that in the few days before the next hearing, I'd make maps debunking each one. And I'm going to share 2 of those with you today. So, false claim number 1, the other herds have adapted, so will the porcupine herd. And we're talking about caribou, not porcupines. It's named for the Porcupine River. So there are 4 caribou herds in the Alaskan Arctic. They all migrate, oops. I don't know why everything just turned blue. Thank you. They all migrate out of the mountains and onto the coastal plain in the springtime to calve. And they go there because it's windy, so they get relief from insects, and it's flat, so they can see predators from far away. Good place to have your babies. But because of the arcing geography of the Brooks Range, the coastal plain is really big in the central and western Arctic, and it's really small in the refuge, where the mountains are a lot closer to the sea. And that's where the porcupine herd calves. So when there's been oil development in the central Arctic, like around Prudhoe Bay, those herds have had room to move to other parts of the coastal plain to avoid it. But the porcupine herd doesn't have that flexibility because they're already calving in a bottleneck. So we can't expect them to have the same outcome. So false claim number 2, there will be no impact on subsistence hunting. Research tells us that this is also not true. Impacts of oil development on subsistence hunting have been studied extensively in other parts of the North Slope. And we know from that research that we can expect an effective loss of subsistence use anywhere from 5 to 25 miles around any infrastructure. And so this map shows the expected loss in subsistence use based on the most conservative end of that estimate, a buffer of just 5 miles. And you can see that it eliminates the whole coastal plain. Now, these are all kind of wonky. They were for this Senate committee, which was a pretty initiated audience. Most people aren't touched by maps of oil and gas leasing. So just in the last couple of days, when I should have been sleeping and adjusting to Eastern time, I have started working on a map to help tell a more compelling story that gets at the heart of what's at stake here. So this is the beginnings of a map for a film we're working on right now about a relationship that has existed for thousands of years between the Gwich'in people and the porcupine caribou herd. So these are the winter, summer, and calving grounds of the porcupine herd, and here's the path of one cow over the course of a full year. So you can see she starts in the wintering range and ends up up on the coastal plain and has a calf, and then, follows her through the rest of the year. So in the coming weeks, we'll be turning this into motion graphics for the film, which will be coming out this winter. And I've adapted all of these for the web using AI to HTML, which I learned about for the first time at NACIS last year. Thank you, Riley. And these will soon live on our new website that we launched just yesterday. So check it out, wilderness.org. So conservationists have won the fight to keep drilling out of the Arctic Refuge more than 50 times. But in conservation, you only get to lose once. We're going to be working on this for a really long time, especially in the coming year. And I'm always interested to hear what people find most compelling or least compelling about this issue, because it's part of my job to try to make people care about it. So please, if you have thoughts or feedback or ideas, please come talk to me. I would really love to hear from you. Thank you.